Thank you, Cathaoirleach. Perhaps uniquely in this House of Cathaoirleach, I actually know what it's like to have a defective home, having gone through the pyrite crisis a number of years ago. And I know the worry and the heartache that that can cause. And it's a real lived experience that I'm sure the people in the gallery will associate with, and undoubtedly thousands and thousands of people all over the country, because I don't believe it is actually unique to the three counties that we are on an ongoing basis discussing, namely Donegal, Mayo and Clare. In 2006, I got a phone call from a then neighbour informing me that a TV crew was outside her home on my street looking for an interview about a front page story that featured in the paper that very morning, and my heart sank. That morning, as I mentioned, a newspaper article detailed the beginnings of what became known as pyritic heave, or the pyrite crisis. And my estate at that time had commenced sales in 2003, I should say. And in 2005, when I moved, the 350 homes in the estate were fully occupied. Virtually all were in some way impacted. A further 700 homes in a nearby community were also affected, having been built by the same firm and supplied by the same quarry. As the detail and the extent of that crisis, my heart sank further. The building boom and lack of regulation had struck again. Defective hardcore material from the ground was not allowed sufficient time to pass before putting it into construction projects, meaning that the oxidation process did not have time to occur, and instead occurred in the floor slab of my home and thousands of others. Petrographic analysis of such material is not and was not part of the process when grading hardcore material. Instead, the reaction happened, as I say, in the floor of my home, causing cracking in the rising walls and that of my neighbours. My home and hundreds of others were remediated privately following the settlement of a High Court case between Manolly Homes and Lagan Asphalt, to which I and others were extremely interested parties. The methodology for that remediation, Cathaoirleach, became the template for the Pyrite Remediation Board, which benefited thousands of families on the East Coast following a decision of the government of 2011 to 2016. And perhaps, as I say, uniquely, I know what it feels like to live in a home that, through no fault of my own, has major potential structural issues. And I could go at great lengths, Cathaoirleach, about some of the stories from my own constituents and that of Meath and Louth and beyond in relation to gas pipes being at risk, among other things. This bill is a very important step to addressing a matter that really is of the utmost importance to me. Your home is your castle, and having spoken to families in Donegal and in Mayo in recent months, I wholeheartedly support their campaigns to get their homes repaired as quickly and as equitably as possible. I do believe that the government have engaged in good faith to increase on the provisions of this bill and expand the scope of the support scheme to affected homeowners. As a result, we now have a much improved scheme that was launched by former Minister Murphy that moves us much closer to the delivery on the important measures that will allow affected homeowners to begin to move on with their lives. There has been significant engagement with local authorities in the affected areas, Housing Agency, the NSAA and indeed others, and these consultations are undertaken in order to maximise the impact of the scheme, all with the view of helping those who have found themselves in this situation through no fault of their own. And I wish to repeat some of the comments of Deputy O'Donnell and indeed Deputy McHugh in relation to the issue, Cathaoirleach, of foundations, because it's not just floor slabs. This material can also get under foundations. Indeed, there was extensive investigations on a particular motorway in this country under which the foundations for the crossing bridges were supplied by the same quarry that supplied my home. Now, it happened a good number of years beforehand, but such was the extent of the lack of knowledge in the building control sections of this state that those investigations had to take place. I think it odd, Minister, that if we're going to clear a site, that we're not going to test the foundation. I do frankly think it's odd. The state is going to be putting in hundreds of thousands of euros into each family home. with the potential risk that we'll have to revisit it. And I don't think that makes sense. As somebody who had a home with pyrite in the floor slab, not the foundation, the floor slab, a different thing, but it can cause swelling, which can cause cracking, which can cause issues with gas pipes, which can cause other issues, unintended consequences. We know of this, so let's try and resolve it before the passage of this legislation. I would also, Cathaoirleach, though, like to commend members of the Housing Committee, whom I know have put, if not dozens of hours, certainly potentially hundreds of hours into this process, and I know a number of them have spoken already. The Housing Committee does some incredibly important work, and I know that this was not a particularly easy issue to deal with. But I do welcome a number of key improvements within the new scheme, namely the development of the independent appeals mechanism for homeowners, an important change for the maximum opportunity for homeowners to engage with the process. And naturally, there is a need, as has been dwelt upon by quite a number of people, to pursue the perpetrators of this situation. And I would ask the Minister to outline what steps or mechanisms the State is taking to recoup the very significant outlay of public monies that this scheme will undoubtedly consume. Major construction companies that participated in creating this crisis should not escape the consequences, and the taxpayer should not bear the full cost. I'm sure that there are a plethora of companies, consultants and engineers who should be on the hook for this scheme, and I personally require the assurance that we are not going to simply let that slide, as many have said before me. I believe that this scheme is not perfect, but equally I haven't found one yet that is. The pyrite scheme was far from perfect, but it has been successful at putting lives back on track. The scheme is most likely no different. And I would ask the Minister to consider some of the amendments which I know he's expecting in order to potentially improve upon the significant work already undertaken by his department and indeed by the Housing Committee. And to conclude, Cathaoirleach, to talk about the apprehension and the pain and the upset that this causes families. And as I said, I've gone through it myself. And while my own circumstances were different back in 2006 when this occurred, in 2011 when my home was remediated, in 2013 when the government scheme got up and running and remediated thousands of homes in Leinster. 10 years is a long time, and the statute of limitations, unfortunately, is most likely kicked in for most people. And the legal minds in the House will dwell upon that, undoubtedly. We talked about amending the statute of limitations in the past in relation to other pieces of legislation. But the fact of the matter is, and a couple of members have touched upon it, I think it is important for us to recognise that our role in this place is to legislate, is to bring about these schemes, but it is also to ensure value for money. And notwithstanding the very important work that has to be done to remediate these homes, because these families had absolutely nothing to do with the lack of quality in the building blocks and beyond that they built their homes with. But we have a responsibility to the taxpayer, and it's for that reason that I've asked for clarity on what exactly it is the State is proposing to do, to either assist individuals in the pursuit of these companies or to pursue those companies. I believe that is something that we should all aspire to, because our building regulation has been lacking over many, many decades. And even after pyrite, there were deficiencies within the changed building regs. Petrographic analysis, as I said, is still not done on hardcore material. Grading is done, sure, pressure testing is done, things like that, but petrographic analysis is not. The argument being, of course, it's too expensive. But there are many quarries in this country, particularly in Leinster, and it's well known that they are in a strata of material that can cause problems if it is quarried and not left sitting for a number of months. The biggest issue and the reason that pyrite in floor slabs occurred was because we were in a building boom. They were extracting that material, they were breaking it up, grading it, putting it in trucks and delivering it to sites without any time passing. Our system is flawed to this day and we need to fix it. Thank you.